Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are. This is Martin Sines and Sean Munyo, your host for Note Investing Made Easier, the weekly podcast. And welcome to the show, everybody. Sean, how are you doing today?
Oh man, it's another great day. Great day out here in Colorado.
Awesome. We got, I know you were here last week in Virginia and you're back home, so that probably feels good for the family.
Feels good to get away from all that humidity, for sure.
Yeah, DC gets hit pretty hard. We got a really, really fascinating topic that you don't really hear about. You don't hear it covered much out there, and that is how to build strong relationships with borrowers. And before we get into the topic, I do want to make an announcement. We do have a Note Investing Fundamentals workshop coming up next Friday and Saturday, August 21st and 22nd. It's going to be virtual, and I think there's 3 slots left because we like to cap it out at 10. And so if you haven't registered, go to Note Investing Made Easier and you can sign up today. And, really the whole fundamentals workshop is centered around helping someone new avoid a costly learning curve. And note investing comes with a lot of pitfalls, a lot of effort, and a lot of chances one takes. So anything you can do to minimize all 3 of those factors, the better for that individual.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so we'll get right into it. So treating, how does one treat a borrower? How does a note investor, a note business best work with the borrower? And I'll kind of start it off with your take on that, Sean.
Yeah, Martin, it's an interesting question. It's almost a fundamental question in your strategy as a note investor. How you treat your borrowers should be something that you've already decided before you buy your first note, right? And so, in our organization, it's all about customer service. And so we see that borrower as a customer, and like in any other business, everybody in the organization is a part of the customer service program, right? And so if you set up your note business with the customer in mind, likely you'll treat them different.
Got it. So hiring individuals that care about the borrowers, care about helping people stay in their homes, that's what I'm getting from you?
Absolutely. Everybody in our organization that comes on board knows that at some point they'll take a call from a borrower. They'll have to discuss, situations with the borrower. They'll have to hear the life story and the reason why that borrower maybe got behind. And they need to have compassion, first and foremost, on the situation, so that they can understand it and kind of take it back to the organization, so we can try and work out a payment plan that gets them back on track. And so, yeah, anybody who comes into an organization knows that at some point they'll have to talk to a borrower. And if they're not a compassionate person, we know they're not going to come work for us.
Yeah, many of the borrowers, obviously we're buying, these are mortgage notes whereby the borrower has not made a payment in a few years. So one of the things to keep in mind is, in many cases, the borrower defaulted because there was, some type of challenge they had with relationships. They went through a divorce. a health issue or an employment issue where they lost their job, let's say. So, we're talking to them now at a point where you hope that they've rebounded, they've gotten back on their feet. But in many cases, when you talk to the bar, you still can see, hey, there's still remnants of what went on, that you're talking to you, they're almost having to relive that period of time when they defaulted. So there's a lot of emotions that are involved when you talk to the bar, and you have to have good listening ears, and you do have to be compassionate. But you also have to be, direct in terms of setting expectations, so that way you can move the conversation forward.
Yeah, and I would also argue that even in our income fund, where we have performing loans, right? We went through the last 4 months with a pandemic, and so even with loans that are performing, when we get a call from our borrowers, like the same situation, right? We need to understand what's going on, have compassion for the situation. Maybe they were in the restaurant business and they lost their job, and so even the last 4 months, we've done some things for borrowers to kind of help them during that time, and so our employees know that yeah, we're here to make a return for our investors, but we're also here to kind of help our borrowers through tough times. So we got to balance that.
Yeah, no, and that's a good point. What's interesting is that, I kind of look at the bar relationship as if you're building a home, and so the more of a rapport you can build with the borrowers, the stronger the home gets built with foundation and all. And the better the sustainability of that agreement with the bar, and your communication, dialogue, and all that with the bar is going to be over time. With our operation, we keep our notes cradle to grave, right? So we go modify the loan, we work with the bar on payment plan, and then we keep that loan through the maturity or payoff of that loan, whether it's 30 years. That's our business model. So it's in our interest to set up, and even if you're not keeping it 30 years, let's say that you're modifying a loan and you're going to keep it for a few years and sell it off or something like that, you should still build it for success and build the home on a solid foundation. And that way, and what that means is that the borrower has such a good relationship with you that if they run into trouble down the road, they'll call you, and you'll pick up the phone, and you'll have notes on what occurred, and you'll be able to kind of work with them. Maybe it's a deferment they need for a few months, something happened, or maybe they want to accelerate payments. You never know. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, so the other thing I would say is, if you treated the borrower right, when it comes time, there may be a month where they're tight, right? It may be a month where they're transitioning between jobs. I want them to think of us before they think of somebody else's bill, right? I want them to pay our payment first. And if they know, like, those guys over there at Bequest Funds or New Day Funding, NDF1, whatever entity we're using to hold the note at the time, those guys over there are compassionate, they care. I'm going to make sure that those guys get paid, and maybe some other credit card or something, they kind of wait on paying that bill. And so when we have good relationships, people like to pay us, right? They want to meet their commitments that they promised to pay. And so I think that's critical, right? Borrowers are our customers.
Yeah. That's the rule. That's our rule here. That's our mantra. That's what our company culture is built around, is that borrowers are our customers. They are paying our bills. They are delivering us our cash flow, our operating capital by which we exist. So from day one, when I started note investing in 2013, that was something that I picked up on. Who is putting money in my pocket? Okay, well, let me do everything possible to build a relationship with that individual so that they will be likely to enter into an agreement with me and be likely to continue honoring that commitment over time. And I still have loans from 2013 when I first started that have been paying me, throughout the years, and that's kind of a good statement. That's kind of where you want to be as a note business for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing I would say is, so I take borrower calls. Martin takes borrower calls. Everybody in our organization takes borrowers calls. And I remember just maybe a month or two ago, I was taking calls that day, and it called in from a borrower that was paying, and some of our borrowers like just to chat with people, right? They just like to have a conversation. And I'll never forget, we got talking, and turns out she was a realtor in California. And I said, hey, we might be having some properties come to market out there. Maybe it makes sense for you to send us your information, and maybe we could use you if, in fact, we have a property come up in your area. And so, sure enough, we hung up the phone, and like a week later, I get a letter from her with her realtor information. And we haven't used her yet, but you know what? The card is sitting on my desk, and we'll reciprocate business to our borrowers if we can help them out too. And so I'll just never forget, kind of not just borrowers, but they could be eventually, partners or strategic partners for you if you have a property in that area.
Well, and I've had some borrowers that have read my book, and that's a little weird for me. I'm still that kind of weirds me out a little bit, because I want the separation, but yet, I'm kind of out there somewhat. It's interesting with, and I do talk to individuals quite often in the space, or just coming into the space, people that I'm mentoring and whatnot. And the one thing that I notice is at sometimes, individuals could have some reservation about picking up the phone, calling either the borrower or calling, let's say, the realtor who's trying to arrange a short sale, or calling someone who's looking to do a third party authorization person, looking to do negotiations or what have you. And I can understand, because it can be intimidating, right? You haven't done something. Whenever you haven't done something for the first time, you don't want to screw it up. You want to make sure it's done right. There's a lot of money at stake, so you want to make sure it's done to the best of its ability. And what would you tell someone who is just starting out, who may have that kind of fear running through them about making those outbound touches with the borrowers and realtors and whatnot?
Yeah, I remember when I first got into the space, I kind of had that fear too. But it's a fear you got to take head on, right? Because this is a relational business, right? Whether it's your attorneys, your borrowers, your strategic partners, it all takes a relationship, right? And so I would say, kind of ease into it, right? You have to take it head on, right? But maybe ease into it, right? If it's a borrower that you're most concerned about having a conversation with, you got to have that first conversation, right? And so that's your jumping into the fear. I got to do this, but you can quickly move it to email, right? And so start it out as a conversation, quickly move the conversation to email. And then if you feel more comfortable kind of behind your computer screen with email, kind of move the conversation to email. But that shouldn't be a long-term strategy for you, right? That should be I'm easing into this strategy. But eventually, you need to feel comfortable having conversations with borrowers, attorneys, strategic partners But I would say ease into it, have that first conversation, and move the call to email.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned, strategic partners and everything else. I look at how you interact with a bar the same as how you should interact with a seller, a peer, a vendor, and all other individuals that are in your community that you're building within the node space. So how would you treat your seller, right? You would treat them with respect. You would not waste their time. You'd kind of get to the point. You would be transparent, genuine. And so those same attributes you need to come through when you're talking to the bar. Now, I would also add to that there is, there's an emphasis or a requirement that you're organized.
Yeah.
So in other words, when I talk to a peer, I could talk to a peer and I could be, I could drink a few beers and talk to a peer and just, say something loose or whatever, and that's fine. But when you're talking to a bar, you need to recap where they're at, right? What's their current UPB? What's their current interest rate? When's the date of last payment? You need to have these factual conversation with them. That's very could be sobering for them, but very dry and to the point and correct, right? Mathematically correct, as well as kind of get to the point where you're progressing the relationship, saying, hey, can I send you some options? Would you like me to email you some options? And that's kind of what we do. So it's not anything, everything is like you're asking them, right? Like, what is it you're looking to do?
Right.
Not like you're dictating them. Well, you need to do this. That's not how relationships are built. Relationships are built like, give and take, right? And starting to build that rapport.
But you do make a good point. Like when you are talking to your bars, it is different than talking to a strategic partner or a seller. You need to be very organized. You need to be very clear on the situation with compassion, right? Because in certain states you may be considered a debt collector in that call, and therefore you're under some scrutiny as to what you do say to the bar, right? So and so you do need to be very organized, very clear. It's not like talking to a peer, right? It's a little different, right? And I would pretend like every call is being recorded when you're talking to a borrower. And if you come into that mindset, you're going to be organized, you're going to be clear, but you also have to have some compassion in there.
Yeah, and I think preparation is the key, right? So if you're one of our bars and you call in, instantly our asset managers are going to have your information up. They're going to follow a call protocol for that call, and they're going to take it through the progressions. And so it's very systematized, and with the end result being, let us present you with some options. You get to decide. Let us empower you.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where we like to leave it. And then, that's really the start of the conversation where we treat them. The whole objective is we treat them like they've never been treated by a lender.
Absolutely. And, but most importantly, we actually answer the phone, whereas other lenders don't. They put you in some queue, and who knows if you're actually going to talk to somebody or not eventually. But let's get on that topic. Like what do we not do? What are things that we do not want to do when we're talking to borrowers? We talked about that we should have compassion and build relationships. But what are some of the things you definitely don't want to do?
Avoidance. So I learned very on in as being a small business owner for 16 years, I learned very on that avoidance costs you majorly as a business. You are not going to grow a successful business or be a successful investor with avoidance. You need to take on every situation as it comes to you head on, right then and there, and you could be scared, you could have fear, whatever the case is, you need to handle it. And that separates, boys from the men, and, girls from the women, or however you want to kind of put it. But that borrower calls in, they want to have a difficult conversation. As long as they're not belligerent,
Right.
you need to be ready to have a difficult conversation. Miss Jones, I'm not sure if you know this, but there's a per diem interest on your account that calculates at such and such. You haven't made a payment in 2,181 days. So, and then explaining how this, it's not that you just didn't make a payment for 8 years and everything just froze and nothing accumulated on your account. So you have to explain what happened. And these are things that prior lenders probably haven't explained, because
Right.
they it's not important to explain it. But educating the bar can go a long way in terms of you landing an agreement and building trust and rapport. So I would just say having the difficult conversations is so important. And when our asset managers come on, we train with them, we shadow with them while they're because we want to make sure that, they're compassionate. That's great. But we want to make sure that they're not letting a phone go to voicemail. What are some games, or, some areas of improvement you've seen or you've heard about? If
Well, I just, people, when what I've heard, and just people just aren't really clear with bars. They're especially during the mod process. It's like, if I be as big as possible, maybe I can get a better return on this asset, and kind of play some games with them. And so, kind of, playing some negotiating games with bars, I think is a bad idea, right? You're kind of setting yourself up for a bad mod. This mod needs to hold forever, and so, it's not about playing games during the negotiation process with borrowers, or just like you said, not answering the phone, especially like 2 days before the house goes to sale, because we want to create a lot of pressure on them to make a decision. And so I would just say, don't play games with your borrowers, right? It will bite you. It will bite you. And so, adding additional pressure by playing head games, not answering the phone call when they call in, waiting till the last minute to get them mod options before a property goes to sale. These are all bad tactics to use. That's a short-term game. If you're just looking, if you're in this business just looking for short-term money and you don't care about people, that might be a great strategy for you. But that's not us. We're in this for the long haul. We're in this. We have compassion on people, and so as long as we balance, make sure we can provide a great return for our investors, and create a great situation for the bars, it's a win-win scenario for everybody.
I will say that the thing that comes to mind is on, and this doesn't happen too often, but there are times when taking the property to sale is much more profitable, right?
Yeah.
You have full equity coverage. The property's in a hot market. It's going to sell third party at the auction block. You're going to get your money in 2 weeks. You don't have to worry about, drama with the bar or whatever, however you're kind of, dealing with things. And you get cashed out, versus some 30-year mod that's going to only, pay you $300 a month for 30 years. You're thinking, well, heck, I can get my money out right now. Let me make this move. However, I'd still argue, even though it's more profitable, it's still a short-term game. And if it goes against your philosophy, which is, for us, helping homeowners stay in their homes with payments they can afford, then we're going to go and stay with our model.
Yeah. And I would argue, look at the amortization schedule on that $300 payment over the next 30 years versus what you're going to get at the sale, you might be shocked to see the difference, right? And that's the long-term strategy, right? Yeah, it's great every once in a while to get cashed out, right? But building a business around long-term cash flows, you'll be here forever versus on to something else later.
And that's the key, right? Longevity. You know, when we put together the topic for the company BQuest, you know, it's legacy.
Yeah.
It's legacy, but what's interesting is it's not legacy just for the investors, and we're obviously investors ourselves with the fund, but it's legacy with borrowers, right? Giving them the ability or helping them stay in their homes. So maybe they might, you know, they'll want to pay off their home at some point. So with that said, this is very, very important. And let me tell you, this right here, I'm going to call out. I'm not calling out anyone specific, but you know who you are. We buy RPLs and we buy NP reperforming loans, and we buy non-performing loans all the time where there was mods done before, or there are mods in place if it's a reperforming loan, and they are the crappiest agreements ever known to man. And they don't amortize the borrower. They don't even, in some cases, they don't even cover the interest payment of what they're set up to be. And they're one-page agreements, and they're just garbage. So what we've done is we've remodified those individuals so that it's such an important concept to fully amortize the loan for the borrower.
Absolutely.
It's horrible. It's almost a crime.
Documented, notarized, you know, go finish the process, finish it. Otherwise, somebody else is going to have to clean it up. And whoever you sell it to, you're going to have to pay a discount for the lack of work that you did.
Yeah. Yep. No, so fully amortize your mods. This is a big problem in our industry. And it was a problem with banks that were originating this garbage with arms, and you know, that started adjusting and busting people out with disposable income after the arm starts to adjust after a few years, and investors and hedge funds are doing it on the back end because they want to get the cash flow going on that mod and hit whatever targets they have for themselves. But if you're doing a plan that's not benefiting the borrower, then it's not going to benefit you or your business long term.
I agree. I think you might have uncovered the next topic, Martin. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, we could do a whole afternoon on just, you know, the proper way to modify a loan. But, you know, with that said, we're out of time. Awesome topic. I love engaging with this discussion, Sean.
It's good stuff. Good stuff for sure.
Well, until next week, everybody, you know, thanks for being with us. Martin Signs with Note Investing Made Easier, Sean Munyo with BQuest Funds, and we are out of here.